Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour then, we'll see what's making the headlines with the editor of the Sheffield Star, Nancy Fielder, and the Chief Executive of Conservative Home, Mark Wallace. Super to see you both. Hello. As ever, to the front pages. First of all, let's start with The Guardian. It leads on the news that Nicola Sturgeon has been cleared of breaking the ministerial code. Scotland's First Minister is also on the front of the Press and Journal, which says she is relieved at the watchdog's verdict. The Irish Prime Minister has backed Downing Street over the EU's threat to block vaccine exports to the UK. That's the lead story for the Eye. The Metro leading with the clinical trial in the US, which showed the Oxford AstraZeneca jab caused no serious side effects and was very effective. Sheffield Star marks a year of the pandemic in the UK. Also marking that milestone, The Sun says Boris Johnson has vowed to end lockdown once and for all. The Mirror says Britain is facing the threat of a catastrophic third wave of COVID-19 infections. The Daily Mail claims people face fines of £5,000 for trying to go on holidays abroad from next Monday, with France set to be added to the red list and a warning that all of Europe may follow. The Times carries the same story with news that the foreign travel ban has been extended until July. The Telegraph says care home staff face compulsory vaccination under a new government plan. And the FT reports on the Western sanctions imposed against China over its treatment of Uyghur Muslims. So let's talk more. Nancy Fielder and Mark Wallace are here. Perhaps we'll try and squeeze in both the Mail and the Times, which came a little bit later about those foreign holidays, which I know some people are interested in. But plenty of reflection, Nancy, on the year that was, with the anniversary of the announcement of that first lockdown coming tomorrow.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we all remember incredibly clearly what we were doing, where we were when the Prime Minister spoke on that momentous occasion, and the impact, the instant impact it had. Now it was becoming more and more obvious that this was a really serious pandemic. Schools were closed, but actually it was such a big thing. And there's so many things that we've now taken for granted. Masks, I mean, we didn't even wear masks a year ago, and it took months before it came in. Homeschooling, the universities all shut down. All these things are just life transforming, and we've taken them in our stride. And it's been an awfully tough year. But actually, there's quite a lot of good things, and we've had great community spirit, and there's lots to celebrate. So it's just a massive milestone to look back and in our own personal lives realise really what we've accomplished and what we've done as a country and as a world. Yes,
and actually the picture the Guardian's chosen is really poignant, isn't it? Which is a medical professional holding the hands of a patient, because one of the other things we had to get used to was no visits to people who may not have many days left of their life. It's been really astonishingly terrible for so many people, hasn't it? Your paper, The Star, as well, Nancy. What a year, with some of the numbers that we're still all enduring. But I suppose one good thing 1 year on is that the death rate really is sinking now, isn't it, Mark? Every death is an absolute tragedy. But back to September figures now, we must be heartened, must we not, by the impact of the vaccine rollout coupled with the lockdown.
Indeed, and exactly as Nancy says, it's been a torrid and incredibly tough year that's affected so many people in so many really dreadful ways. But it's also been a year in which people have proved so resilient and adaptable to these challenging circumstances. And one of the most remarkable adaptations that we've seen, mercifully, is the fastest ever development of a vaccine like this. Not just one, but multiple vaccines, which are hugely successfully effective, saving people's lives and preventing suffering. The rollout on an unprecedented scale of those vaccines. So many people already saved by that process. And all around the country right now, there are volunteers and doctors and nurses and scientists who are resting at the end of yet another long day of protecting many thousands more people, and thank goodness for them.
And just a quick thought on your front page, Nancy. one of the figures that sprung out amongst all of them to me, 94.5% rise in the number of people out of work and on benefits. Some of this still is percolating through, isn't it? We've yet to see the full impact for many households in some respects, even though people are saying, the roaring 20s are going to be back with the amount of money that's been saved to get the economy going again. But the economic impact is there and all around us, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it is just going to grow. And I don't think we quite understand or can anticipate the scale of it yet. I mean, that is a massive figure that we've got twice the amount of people in Sheffield who are unemployed, but furlough hasn't finished, has it? And it's quite away from being finished. So what will happen then? I mean, optimistically, we can hope, can't we, that the bars and the restaurants and places are back open and that people go for staycations and that a lot of these jobs come back, and actually maybe even some new ones will be created. But these are often people who are struggling anyway to make ends meet. They're not on great salaries. And actually, this is devastating for many, many families. So there is an awful lot of work. We're at a point where we can celebrate the vaccines, but there's a lot of work to be done to get people back on the feet and to help the economy in our individual cities, but also as a whole country.
Meantime, let's move on to the pure vaccine news, if you like. The Metro going on that really good study from America on the AstraZeneca vaccine that looks specifically at some of the clotting complaints we'd seen in Europe, some of those concerns specifically, and the great efficacy rates as well. And many epidemiologists saying, what a shame this didn't report in January, and it might have calmed a lot of the problems in Europe, which takes us also to the I, which is the Irish Prime Minister backing the UK on vaccine exports. The Prime Minister been doing a bit of telephone diplomacy today and yesterday, not surprisingly. Mark?
Yes, and it's appalling, really, that it's even necessary to do this. You're right that maybe it would have helped somewhat if the US study had been back on the AstraZeneca effects. These results seen in the Metro, no serious illnesses and no deaths among anybody in this trial who took the AstraZeneca vaccine. Remarkable result. But that information, if it had been known in January, would it have prevented what we've seen from EU leaders in the last couple of months? Sadly, I don't think it would, because there already was trial evidence, there already was mass vaccination evidence, there already was clear study and a compelling case for this vaccine. That's why it was authorised in the first place. The reason why EU leaders have been behaving the way they have is not because of doubts about its efficacy, but because of a need to cover their backsides. And whether that's the still anonymous German politicians who untruly, falsely briefed against the efficacy of the vaccine, whether it's Emmanuel Macron, who said that it was pseudo-effective in over 65s, wrong again, whether it's the kind of more recent panics or attacks on AstraZeneca, the company, this is not about questions over the scientific evidence. It's about efforts to distract from the incompetence of some leaders who've got this very badly wrong. And that in itself is shameful because it will cost lives.
Well, Health Minister Lord Bethell raised the prospect today of all of Britain's European neighbours being put on the UK's so-called travel red list, which takes us to the Times, Nancy. Overseas travel ban extended until July, the paper says. Holidays will be banned until the end of June, with people who try to leave the country facing £5,000 fines as ministers tighten border restrictions. This came after Boris Johnson warned today that the third wave in Europe would inevitably touch our shores. I know some people, scientists that I follow, have disputed that, but it certainly felt like he was laying the groundwork for some bad news on travel, if I can put it that way.
Well, it does, and it does feel like what's happened in Europe we've watched in horror and then it's come to us. So actually, I don't think we can criticise for being overcautious here. I understand that people want their holidays, and I understand that this has a huge impact on the industry, on airplanes, on your foreign, well, there's just so many jobs involved with it. But we've got to get on top of this pandemic. We're in a really good position now, and we would be foolish to throw that away. So if that means that we have to stay in our own country, if that means that we have to go for holidays more locally, I'm not sure that's the end of the world. It's certainly not worth risking a potential third wave. And if we can control it, this is the right thing to do. The Prime Minister has been criticised all the way along for reacting too slowly, and he seems to have learnt his lesson. We've got a slow roadmap out of lockdown, and now we're having a move to slow down people going on the holidays. And you know what? There's some great places in this country for staycations. I would suggest anybody comes up north, visit Scotland, Yorkshire. There's some great destinations if you don't want to get on a plane just yet.
There's a but here, in fact, and as you say, holidays in Britain are banned until at least April the 12th, when self-catering accommodation is due to reopen. The but in this article, as I read on, because it's just in, under draft laws published today to implement Johnson's roadmap out of lockdown, leaving the UK without a reasonable excuse, such as work or education, will be illegal until June the 30th. People who travel from England to another part of the UK with the aim of leaving the country or who go to an airport trying to do so face fines of £5,000. But officials stress that the travel ban has been extended for legislative convenience and does not preempt a review of foreign travel due next month. So we will see. At the moment, it's May the 17th at the earliest, isn't it, Mark? So maybe this is just done, as they say, for convenience of law rather than actually the reality of what might happen.
Yes, the way these powers work essentially is that the law creates the right for a ban to be in place, but ultimately it gives ministers the right to use their discretion to set the rules in with some degree of flexibility. So there is this official Global Travel Task Force report that's coming back, I think, on the 12th of April. And that is going to have a major say in advising the Prime Minister and other ministers on exactly what to do. I've got to say, the people I really feel for in this is that we all talk about this just as being about holidays, but of course there are many, many people in this country who have family and loved ones in other countries who would be not effectively going on holiday, but trying to see their loved ones potentially for the first time in a year or more. And I really feel very, very deeply for them. The fact is, as Nancy says, we don't know exactly what risks we're going to see with this growing wave across many of our European neighbours, and that's obviously the reason why this flexibility is being extended.
Absolutely. And as we know, many places in France, for example, have brought in new lockdown restrictions. So hopefully, those efforts will have an impact as well. We'll certainly delve into those newspapers in more detail on travel and elsewhere. Lots of reasons why people try to go abroad. But coming up, China's retaliation to sanctions from the US, EU, UK and Canada over its treatment of Uyghur Muslims. Taking a look at that in more detail.
To tell the truth.
This is a forgotten front line. They are dying here.
Here it comes. Cut.
Boy, have we got some interesting ways of showing you what's going on.
Their message to us, get ready.
Nothing like apocalypse.
Instructing you to stay at home.
I can't believe we did that.
It's pretty special, isn't it?
We should protect our heritage. Unfortunately, it will become part of Azerbaijan.
This monastery is under the protection, for now, the next 5 years at least, of Russian peacekeepers. I'm Diana Magny and I'm Sky's Russia correspondent, based here in Moscow. I witnessed the despair of the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh who were digging up the soil of their dead relatives. It's Armenians who've abandoned these villages now. Quite what their strategy is, I'm not sure, but they have made some arrests already today.
They can't kill everyone, they can't shoot everyone, they can't arrest everybody.
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world. I mean, this clearly says, I love Hitler. Are you saying that doesn't say Hitler? Russia insists that its military build-up in the Arctic is purely defensive.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, editor of the Sheffield Star, Nancy Fielder, and the chief executive of Conservative Home, Mark Wallace. Welcome to both of you. Dominic Raab stood in the Commons today. Mark, did he not? Talked about the Uyghurs. Hours later, Parliament decided to throw out plans to stop trade if genocide is suspected. It's a confusing picture at times, is it not?
Well, I think there's a difference between effect and process. And the first thing is this move to use the Magnitsky sanctions, these personal targeted sanctions against human rights abusers, to use them against Chinese officials and authorities who are responsible for the genocide being perpetrated against the Uyghurs, is really good news. It's high time. I'm pleased about this. I've been pressing for it, as have quite a lot of other Tory activists and various MPs. It's clear after last year when the government introduced the Magnitsky sanctions power, used it to start off against human rights abusers in the Russian state, that it should clearly be used against human rights abusers in China. The second question is about process. So do you want to have the rule on whether a state is determined to be committing genocide? Do you want it set by a court or do you want it set by Parliament? And that is slightly more kind of procedural debate, I think.
Yes. Should we move on to Nicola Sturgeon? A smiling face on the front of the Press and Journal. The First Minister relieved, they say, at the watchdog verdict. Tories warn evidence against her is still overwhelming, pressing ahead with a vote of confidence as well. But certainly this does stand her in good stead, does it not, so far, do you think, Nancy?
Absolutely, and she does look very relieved in that photo and in all the footage that we're seeing today. She clearly has had a huge weight lifted off her shoulders, but actually there is a long way to go in this. And whatever the ultimate outcome, this has caused devastation for her party. It's damaged her reputation, it's damaged the reputation of her predecessor, and it has brought chaos where you might wonder, actually, could have this been handled an awful lot better? So while she looks happy today, I think there are still tough times ahead.
Indeed so. And should the Tories be pressing ahead with a vote of confidence, do you think, Mark?
I think they're right to be pressing on the topic. I mean, in addition to the people who've been harmed by this that Nancy just mentioned, the women who were the original victims of in these allegations have been grievously let down, and Scottish taxpayers have been let down in this process, and anybody who wants to see the Scottish Government live up to its claims about itself in terms of how it governs and how it does things. This has exposed all sorts of, frankly, fundamental malfunctions at the heart of the Scottish Government when its institutions appear to be dominated by the SNP.
Well, they have acknowledged that it wasn't well handled. It doesn't mean that actually deliberate mistakes were made, if you know what I mean. But you're going to... Yeah?
She can't remember. Nicola tells us she can't remember one way or the other dozens of times, and that in itself is a bit of a problem, I think.
OK, well, we'll certainly pursue that tomorrow. There'll be lots more on that, the report from the MSPs, the vote, etc. We will see you too at 11:30 for more. Thank you very much indeed, Nancy Fielder and Mark Wallace.